We've got another round of nerfs to K'Sante and Kassadin, along with buffs to many melee supports for 13.3. Jungle XP is also being increased, so lots of meta-shifting changes to discuss. With the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data, we strive to bring you guys the most timely and accurate updates on the solo queue tier list each and every patch. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. Let's not waste any time and dive right into those jungle changes. Treat Gold is going from 30 down to 20. XP from large monsters is increased from 75 to 85. Stealth Ward Trinket cooldown is being lowered by 30 seconds at level 1. Lastly, tower damage is being increased by 20 damage early on. The last two changes are definitely nerfs to jungle gank power, but in all honesty, it's not that big of a deal for the majority of ranks. How often do lower elo junglers even look for tower dive plays? Not all that often, so these nerfs are more so targeted towards high elo and pro play, but won't affect most players. The Treat Gold nerf in exchange for more experience is a pretty even trade-off, so all in all, these are small nerfs to jungle for 13.3. XP being increased helps every jungle, but even more so for junglers that like to power farm. A few junglers who are already in solid spots that will benefit from these changes include Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Master Yi, and Nocturne. Champs like Eve and Fiddle, who are more level 6 reliant than most junglers, are going to be loving the XP changes. With the emergence of ADC supports being played in the pro scene, Riot's wasting no time in nerfing the strategy by targeting Umbral Glaive. Umbral's cooldown is being increased from 40 to 50 seconds. Range damage to wards drops from 3 to 2. Traps will no longer be insta-killed by Umbral. Pyke, Graves, Senna, and Ashe are 4 champs who build Umbral consistently, so they will be feeling effects of this nerf the most. Overheal is being adjusted this patch as the shield is changed from 10 plus 9% max health to 20 scaling to 300 based on level. Riot has stated that this will be a buff after level 5. In less volatile early game matchups, we can definitely see Overheal being prioritized over Triumph and Presence of Mind now, especially in games where the enemy comp has heavy dive threat. The buff shield from Overheal will be really nice. The only ADC consistently running Overheal prior to these buffs had been Aphelios, so he's definitely buffed for this patch, but as for everyone else, we'll have to track how the rune performs throughout the patch. Radiant Virtue is being changed from a utility tank mythic to more of a selfish tank mythic. The ability Haste Aura is being completely removed, which will limit the power of the item on support champions. Cost is going up from 3,000 to 3,200. Cooldown is up as well from 60 to 90. So those are the nerfs, but what about the buffs? Max health is going from 10 to 15%. Healing is up as well from 8 to 12% max health. For champions like Karma and Udyr who could proc the passive non-stop due to their low cooldown ults, we expect them to see the biggest decline with Radiant. As for champions that have ultimate cooldowns longer than 90 seconds, it's literally not going to matter that the Radiant passive cooldown is being increased. Shen is one we expect to continue doing great with Radiant, while champs like Zac and Sejuani, whose abilities scale off health, will be loving the max health buff. Cost increase combined with the ability Haste Aura being removed likely kills Radiant for traditional support champions, so Bard, Alistar, Rakan, Karma, and Rel are ones we'll be tracking throughout the patch. Tenacity will be adjusted this patch so that stacking Tenacity will be less effective. Moving on to the champion changes. Starting off in the top lane, we'll have a few buffs to Kayle. Passive movement speed is going from 8 to 10%. E on hit damage ratio is up from 0.2 to 0.25. E missing health active is going from 8 scaling to 10% to 8 scaling to 12%. Pretty minor buffs overall and definitely not enough to propel Kayle back into the meta. Kayle will remain in the top lane A tier for 13.3. The only other top laner change for this patch is K'Sante. Despite K'Sante performing at a very mediocre rate in solo queue, his presence in the pro scene is extremely high, which is why he's being nerfed. Q knockup duration is going from 1 to 0.65 seconds. Q stun duration is down as well from 1 scaling to 1.25 seconds to 1 second at all ranks. W minimum stun duration is going from 0.35 scaling to 0.75 seconds to 0.3 scaling to 0.5 seconds. Our bonus resist lost on use is being increased from 65 to 85%. For solo queue specifically, K'Sante will definitely be in the gutter for 13.3. Champ was already in an underwhelming spot for the majority of ranks before this nerf, so he'll be moving into a very poor C tier position. For the top lane tier list, most optimal carries of the patch are Gangplank, Darius, Shen, and Jax. GP is an absolute monster on his 2-item spike now with both Essence Reaver and Quick Blades buffed in 13.1b. Bot lane buffed last patch gives even more priority to picks like Gangplank and Shen, who have the ability to easily impact the bot side of the map. On the topic of bot lane impact, Kled is a pretty underrated top laner right now. Black Cleaver buffs last patch have been really nice for Kled, while he's actually winning a ton into meta top laners like Gangplank and Darius. Best low elo top laners of the patch are Jax, Garen, and Nasus. Fiora, Darius, and Jax are good value bans due to their power levels and play rates. Lee has started off Season 13 rotting at the bottom of the jungle tier list, so a few buffs are headed his way. Q bonus AD ratio is going from 1 to 1.2. E will now have a total AD ratio instead of a bonus AD ratio. E slow will also be increased from 20 scaling to 60% to 20 scaling to 80%. E ratio change is actually pretty massive, and combined with the Q change will make a more offensive Lee Sin build really strong. We will be moving Lee up one tier, going from C into B for 13.3. Kayn will receive a couple of minor buffs this patch, with his assassin passive damage being increased from 13 scaling to 40% to 15 scaling to 45%. Non-Rost Q damage is being changed, with the base damage lowered from 75 scaling to 155 to 70 scaling to 150. The bonus AD ratio, however, is going from 65 to 80%. Overall, buffs that we don't see being enough to move the needle for Kayn, so he will remain a B tier jungler for 13.3. Trundle is next up on the buff list, with his W cooldown being lowered from 18 scaling to 14 seconds to 16 scaling to 12 seconds. This next change won't affect Trundle's power level, but his dance emote will now scale off his movement speed. Pretty insignificant changes in regards to increasing Trundle's strength, so he will remain in our jungle B tier. Zac is one of the most OP junglers right now, so Riot is looking to combat that for 13.3. W AP ratio is going from 4 to 3%. E damage AP ratio is down from 90 to 80%. E base damage is down as well, from 60 scaling to 260 to 60 scaling to 240. Considering Zac does not need to build Demonic Embrace to be effective, the AP ratio nerfs won't matter all that much. Zac is still a very solid jungler even without Demonic, so his value will remain high. With that said, Zac's OP status will be challenged by these nerfs, and we see him fitting in as an S tier jungler for 13.3. Jungle tier list is going to be looking a little different this patch, as Elise, Evelynn, Fiddle, and Maokai reign supreme. Champs like Eve and Fiddle, who are more level 6 reliant than most junglers, are going to be loving the XP changes. With XP in the jungle being increased, it's going to be a lot more punishing now if you end up failing a gank. If you're playing against an enemy jungler who's hard farming and you end up getting nothing out of your gank, that farming jungler is going to be rewarded a little more now. This isn't to say that ganking won't be effective, you'll just need to be a bit more selective in the quality of ganks that you choose. Our top 3 low elo junglers of the patch are Fiddle, Mordekaiser, and Zac. Maokai, Elise, and Zac are a few of the highest priority bans. LeBlanc has held one of the lowest win rates for any mid laner in recent patches, so a few buffs are being issued. Mana regen per 5 is going from 6 to 8. Mana regen growth is up from 0.8 to 1. Q mana is going from 50 scaling to 70 to 50 at all ranks. Our cooldown is buffed in the early game, going from 60 scaling to 30 seconds to 50 scaling to 30 seconds. The Q buff doesn't even come into effect until later in the game, since you max W out first, so that one doesn't really matter a whole ton. Some mana back early on will be nice, and 10 seconds off R opens up some more windows for snowball opportunities, but in the grand scheme of things, LeBlanc needs a lot more to be back in a viable spot. We'll be moving LeBlanc from C into B tier, but she'll remain relatively weak for 13.3. More Kassadin nerfs are on the way for 13.3, with his E cooldown refresh going from 1 to 0.75 seconds. E damage is lowered at the earlier ranks, going from 80 scaling to 180 to 60 scaling to 180. R damage is down by 10 at all ranks. These are pretty significant nerfs, and coupled with the E cooldown nerf from 13.1b will lead to Cass losing a good chunk of power. Our initial expectations have Cass dropping from S into A tier, but we'll keep a close eye on him throughout the patch, as he could remain a fringe S tier pick if the stars align. For the second patch in a row, Anivia will be the only OP tier mid lane champion. We'll be adjusting Karma down to A tier, as the Radiant Virtue changes are going to lead to a loss in strength. The best low elo mid laners of the patch are Swain, Malz, and Heimerdinger. Kassadin, Anivia, and Vex are a few of the best mid lane bans. Not a single direct change to any ADC this patch, so let's jump right into the tier list. Draven, Xayah, and Samira are who we have rated as the most optimal bot lane carries. ADCs that can build Infinity Edge second have all seen a nice uptick in power over the past patch. Draven and Samira, being two champs that benefit from more than just the IE changes, are a step ahead of the rest of the competition. If you guys want a complete update on the new ADC builds, be sure to check out our recent itemization guide we uploaded last week. Our top 3 low elo ADCs of the patch are Tristana, Misfortune, and Jhin. Highest on our ban list for support are Draven, Xayah, and Samira. Amumu has been in our support OP tier for a while now, so it's not much of a surprise to see some nerfs. Q mana cost is going from 40 scaling to 60 to 45 scaling to 65. E damage dropped significantly at rank 1, going from 80 to 65. Amumu had been in such an OP spot, so his relative power level will remain high. We'll be adjusting Amumu from OP into S, but he will still be a great support pickup. We have a bunch of buffs to melee supports this patch, first starting with Alistar. Passive self-heal is going from 23 scaling to 142 to 5% of his max health. Passive ally heal is going from 46 scaling to 284 to 6% of his max health. Q mana cost is down by 5 at all ranks. Q AP ratio is up from 50 to 70%. W cost is lowered by 15 at all ranks. W AP ratio is up from 70 to 90%. E cost is down by 20 at max rank. EAP ratio is up from 40 to 70%. All in all, a really nice set of buffs for Alistar, and these AP ratio changes could potentially open up some more offensive builds. Shirelia's and even Azania's purchase on Alistar will have a lot more potential in 13.3. Ali has been really close to moving into an S tier position in previous patches, so these buffs will be enough for him to lock down that spot. A few buffs to Braum's early game are on the way, with his base health regen and base health being increased. Passive target immunity is being buffed, going from 8, 6, and 4 seconds at levels 1, 7, and 13 to levels 1, 6, and 11. A stronger skirmish off that level 6 spike as a result of these buffs. Q cooldown is being changed as well, going from 10 scaling to 6 seconds to 8 scaling to 6 seconds. Braum has no issues at all being effective in mid to late game fights. It's his laning phase that tends to hold him back, so these buffs are really nice to help combat that weakness. We're optimistic that Braum moves back into a viable spot for 13.3, and we'll be moving him from B into A tier. Not is already being picked a ton right now in solo queue, so it's a bold move by Riot to issue some buffs. Passive damage is going from 8 scaling to 110 to 14 scaling to 116. W mana cost is lowered from 80 to 60. W shield is up from 40 scaling to 80 to 50 scaling to 90. E damage is up by 20 at max rank, while the AP ratio is going from 30 to 50%. Not will without a doubt be one of the best solo queue supports for 13.3, as we'll be moving him into an S tier slot. Rakan has a few interesting changes for 13.3, starting with some alterations to Q. Q damage is being increased from 70 scaling to 250 to 70 scaling to 290. AP ratio is up from 70 to 90%. Q heal is going from 30 scaling to 115 to 40 scaling to 210. WAP ratio is being thrown in a bit of extra scaling as well, going from 70 to 80%. So even though Q damage is increased by 30 at max rank, that doesn't really matter due to how players level their skills on Rakan. Q is the most commonly maxed out last on Rakan, which means he sits with the spell at rank 1 until level 14. Most games end before you hit level 14 on a support, so the damage going up on Q means nothing at all. The heal, however, being buffed at rank 1 is significant and makes these Q changes more impactful. Especially with Xayah being in a very strong spot right now, Rakan will be looking really good in 13.3, and we will be moving him into an OP tier position. For the complete support tier list, we have Rakan, Maokai, Blitzcrank, and Sona repping OP tier slot. Melee supports are on the rise for 13.3, as we are seeing Karma nerfed due to Radiant Virtue changes. Yuumi was recently gutted, while Rakan, Alistar, Braum, and Nautilus are all buffed. Sona is the one enchanter worth playing right now, as her ability to thrive with recent Archangels changes is amazing. It's hard to say how impactful the Umbral changes will be to supports like Pyke, Senna, and Ashe, but we will be sure to keep you guys updated if they do end up significantly hurting those champs. Best low elo supports of the patch are Brand, Heimer, and Zyra. Blitzcrank, Nautilus, and Alistar are 3 of the most ban-worthy supports for 13.3. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank-up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent Challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to conclude our updated look into the solo queue meta as we head into patch 13.3. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good luck in solo queue, and we'll see you back soon.